Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Liam's Library. It's only been a couple of days since my last review. I haven't taken any notes on this review, but seeing as though I read a couple of short stories last night, I thought I'd talk about the first one. So, we are going to stay on Night Shift. I recently talked about Sometimes They Come Back, and last year I talked about I Know What You Need, short stories by Stephen King. Now, what I've done is I've gone right back to the start of the book and started from the beginning. Now, the first story in this is called Jerusalem's Lot. As I mentioned before, in Night Shift, there is a prequel and a sequel to his best-selling vampire novel, Salem's Lot. And the first one, the prequel, is the first story in this book, and it's called Jerusalem's Lot. Notice the abbreviation, Salem's Lot, Jerusalem's Lot. Pretty obvious. However, the story Jerusalem's Lot, when I was young and I first read it, it was hard for me to read. I didn't really like it. It's set in 1850 and it flashes back to the 1780s, and it's written in not so much Old English. You know, Stephen King in his 20s doing his best to write like it's written in Old English, and it's very H.P. Lovecraft influenced. But it's vampires, but it's technically not. There's not really any blood-sucking vampires in it. Now, it tells the story, Jerusalem's Lot tells the story of a man named Charles Boone. And he has this long line of Boones that go back, 100-something years. And he's been left this big old mansion in the middle of the country in Maine. Back then, I think it's called something else. Anyway, the house is called Chapelwaite. And he's left this big rambling old structure, and him and his servant, Calvin McCann, go to live there. And when they get there, he's really excited about the whole prospect of living in this house that his ancestors built. Maybe not so much built. I don't think it actually says that. It might say that they built it. It's been there for a long time. So this story is told in the way that Dracula is written by Bram Stoker. It's written in diary excerpts. So that might be a nod towards Dracula for Stephen King, because he always said Salem's Lot was his book, Salem's Lot. He was influenced by Bram Stoker's Dracula. He was pretty much trying to make Dracula a modern vampire story. He reckons he pretty much stole the premise. Now, with Jerusalem's Lot, we go back to the time of Dracula in the 1800s, and it's all written as Charles's letter to a friend of his that's just moved down to Florida. Every heading is entitled Dear Bones, as he talks to a friend of his about what he discovers in this house of Chapelwaite, how he goes into town and all the locals fork the sign of the evil eye at him and whisper things, and they think he's completely mad for moving into this house because the Boones are cursed. No Boone has ever been happy living in this mansion. And so they start just exploring this house, and it sounds like there's rats in the walls, but big rats that scratch and sometimes make moaning noises. Now, rats don't really do that. So there's something going on. There's a mystery here. And, the main character, Charles Boone, he's a delight. He's very well spoken. He's a nice man. He's not evil, not in the slightest. And him and his servant, Calvin McCann, are trying to solve this mystery. Now they come across some papers and a map. And a map shows them of a deserted village just through the woods past Chapelwaite near the river, called Jerusalem's Lot. Now, they venture there one day, and there's something about this town. Now, if you've ever read anything by H.P. Lovecraft, you can see what Stephen King's doing here. He's putting all the dread into every sentence. Just the sound the echoes make through the town, the fact that the birds are just massing, and their cries are just omens, and just the dark, heavy feeling you get when walking through this town the second you step into it. There's even a bit of a nod towards the Mary Celeste, the ghost ship, where when they venture into a few of these deserted houses in Jerusalem's Lot, They find, that the beds have been made and turned back as if that night they were about to go to sleep, and like dinner prepared with knives and forks sitting there. But the place hasn't been touched for over 50 years. And just past all the abandoned houses is a church, this big, tall church. And inside it, there is this stench, this otherworldly, timeless, murderous, horrifying stench. Like I said, the whole point of the dread of this story is how he describes just how you're feeling when you're in this church. Now, he finds some diary papers when they go back to Chapelwaite from 1780 or 1790, something like that, from an ancestor of his who was obsessed with this town of Jerusalem's Lot, and was also obsessed with a mysterious book called De Vermis Mysterious, which is the mystery of the worm. And so, and think about it. If you've ever read the Dunwich Horror or anything like that, H.P. Lovecraft wrote about the Necronomicon, like this ancient pagan druidic book, the Book of the Dead. It's not real, just like the book in Jerusalem's Lot, The Mysteries of the Worm. I doubt it's real, but these people are obsessed with it, and his ancestor is obsessed with it and manages to get himself a copy. And it slowly possesses him, and he does all these black mass rituals in this church, in this town, and impregnates a whole bunch of people. And while this is going on, the stuff that's going on in town, a cow is born with two heads, there's a blood moon, everything is just a dark omen, and the whippoorwills, these birds, they just keep massing more and more and more. And this is all told from the point of view of Charles Boone, and when you get about halfway through, Calvin McCann, his servant, starts to keep his own journal. And these excerpts are taken now from Calvin McCann's journal. Reminds you of Dracula, Dr. Seward's journal and Jonathan Harker's journal. Definitely a nod towards Bram Stoker, most definitely. I have a great time with it. The dread is fantastic. It's easy to follow, When I was younger, it was hard to get into Lovecraft. I read a lot of his stuff, but a lot of his stuff, like The Mountains of Madness, I could never finish that. It was just seeing too much description of just the darkness beyond the stars, and I couldn't find a good flowing narrative, like when you read The Color Out of Space and how easy that is to read. One of his best things he ever wrote. But Jerusalem's Lot's easy to read. It's a great read, and they find out what's in the walls. Now, I'm not going to give that away because that's cool. They end up finding out what's in the walls, and we get this cool little cliffhanger like Stephen King does with his short stories. It all ends terribly for Charles Boone and Calvin McCann and the mystery of the worm, and the mystery is most definitely uncovered, and it's very antichrist and just terrible and horrifying and anti-Christian. It's just intense and blood-fueled satanic mayhem. But now we flash forward to 1970. And this is the end of the book. Sorry, my sister-in-law has just rocked up so I can hear my dogs woofing. Yeah, there they go. So I'm going to knock this review on the head right now. But it goes all the way to 1970, where Charles Boone thought he was the last of his lineage, of the Boones. And so with him dying back in 1850, he was doing the world a favour and stopping this curse in its tracks. But we have this young fellow with the last name Boone, and Charles didn't know anything about him. And what happens? He inherits the Chapelwaite house. And you know what? There's some big rats in the walls by the sounds. The end, something, 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 Boone, 1970 something. It's just such a great read. It's such a great time. It's dreadful. It's Stephen King. Like I said, I'm probably going to say that in nearly every single one of these stories, but a couple. It's Stephen King at the height of his horror short story power. So I've decided, either later on today or tomorrow, I'm going to do Graveyard Shift. And then after that, I'm going to do Night Surf. And I'm just going to work my way through it. Like I said, I've already done Know What You Need. I've already done Strawberry Spring. So we're going to smash Night Shift. We're going to smash it together. We're going to read this book together here at Liam's Library. So I'll leave you with that. Go out and get this book, man. You're going to have a great time. Spend a dark, creepy day reading it. Look after one another. Read some great books. Watch some even better fucking movies. And see you.